Welcome to The Stream. In today's Africa News Special, we look at Botswana's decision to once again allow the hunting of elephants. Then we'll discuss what the detention of two prominent bloggers says about freedom of expression in Mauritania. I'm Femi Okay.
And I'm Malika Bilal. Send your thoughts on those stories via Twitter and YouTube. But first, Zimbabwe, where millions of people are living with the daily disruption of power cuts. The country's state-run utility recently imposed hours-long blackouts after a drought left a hydroelectric plant short of water from a nearby dam. The cuts have had a major impact on Zimbabweans already struggling to meet the rising cost of petrol and diesel.
I keep a fuel jerry can here because any time the power goes, I have to close the shop and go to the petrol station to buy diesel for the generator so that I can keep the business running. Diesel's also expensive and not readily available, which is another challenge. I only powered up the generator at night so that the fridges are cold enough to store meat. That's the situation in this country.
Joining us to discuss this is TENDAI MARIMA. She is a freelance journalist in Bulawayo, Zimbabwe.
And Marshall Gore is chairman of the UK branch of Zimbabwe's ruling party, Zanu PF. He joins us from London. Welcome to you both. So let's get started with our community because they have a lot to say about this. I want to start with this tweet. This is from someone who says, putting it very clearly here, imagine living in a situation where half to 3/4 of your salary goes towards transportation. That is our reality now. And so for a little deeper taste on that reality, we got a video comment from a student. He's a master's student, and he talks about what life is like for him now. Have a listen.
Students are preparing for their junior examinations without electricity most of the times. Fuel tax, which is inflationary, has led to a continuous increase in the price of fuel, with a litre costing around $5, with shortage still prevailing. This has resulted in an increase in the cost of transport for businesses and individuals, which has led to an increase in the price of goods and services. Limited transport as most public transport operators stopped operating, forcing people to walk 20 to 30 kilometers going back home where there's no electricity. The government has failed to make good on previous promises to end the shortages.
So let's go straight to the chairman with that. Walking 20 to 30 kilometers, no electricity. Marshall, what would you say to these two gentlemen who shared their experiences?
Well, first of all, I want to say the power cuts are regrettable and unfortunate through circumstances beyond everyone's control. We've recently had a drought, and on top of that, again, we had Cyclone El Nino. But I think the president and the government is taking this very seriously. This has led to some changes within the hot seat of the energy minister. We have now a new energy minister appointed, Fortune Chassis, who is now looking at all these matters in detail to see at how best government can tackle the situation and make normality return without any further delays. It's unfortunate that we are going through this situation we have gone. But what I want, the message I carry to the citizens is that we are going through a massive reform of our economy. And in the middle of this, we have had the unfortunate drought and the cyclone. So I just want to say to the citizens, we need to also be patient and bear with our government as they try frantically to resolve these challenges. They are unfortunate, regrettable, but they will be resolved soon.
TENDAI, tell us about the reality down on the ground. Marshall is in the UK right now. Obviously, he's very involved in Zanu PF, the ruling government in Zimbabwe. But in terms of what people are experiencing, we'll see one dramatic picture or video of somebody with no power. But is that the whole of Zimbabwe?
Yes, it is a situation that we're seeing across the country, even in urban central parts of a city. You know, you would find that there are blackouts even during the day, you know, for a couple of hours. It affects restaurants. It affects offices where people do work. It also affects health centers as well. So, you know, I think the situation in the country, it is quite critical. And, you know, the promise that, you know, the government is trying to reform the economic situation, it's something that people are asking a lot of questions about because they're not seeing the turnaround that they were promised when the country held elections last year in July.
Mm-hmm. So there's a sentiment here from Prosper on Twitter who says that the citizens are justified for their frustrations at this economic malaise, but the government is also right in implementing economic policies with short-term pain but long-term gain. What is right is not always popular, and what is popular is not always right. So, Marshall, what is the long-term gain here?
I think the long-term gain is that the economy is on the mend. We've just had what I would call a surgery with the Transition Stabilization Program being implemented. So we have had huge changes within our economy, and we have already started to see some gains with the fiscal consolidation that has happened. We've already started to see the government deficit being reduced. We've started to see government operating with more economic responsibility. There's more accountability in terms of fiscal accountability. We now have a new local trading currency, the RTGS dollar, which has obviously helped in some way to stabilize domestic trade. But by and large, we need more production. We need more foreign currency to alleviate all these shortages that we have. It's not an event, but it's what is required, and we have to work towards that. And everyone has to work towards that. We need productivity. We need a nuanced approach in how we look at things. We need to be more responsible with the few resources that we have. We have to focus more on infrastructure development projects so that we can resuscitate the economy wholeheartedly. So yes, it's a period of pain, but I envisage this being a short term. The longer term is bright.
TENDAI, so Marshall says a period of pain as described in the last year. How do you see that on the ground as you're doing your reporting? We obviously have power cuts right now, but what else was the pain like? How could you describe that?
What we've seen is there are power cuts. There are also shortages of certain basic commodities. The price of bread has fluctuated over the past few months, even though the government has promised that it would try and keep the prices of certain goods down. But, we actually haven't seen that on the ground. The fuel shortages that we've been experiencing, it's been an ongoing thing since last year, despite the fact that the price of fuel has gone up. The need is still there, and there are still shortages. And also the country is still facing the same problems with the physical flow of cash, just simply being able to find cash in the banks. People are still lining up, pensioners still line up on the 13th and 14th of every month. You see long queues outside the banks of people waiting to get their money. So this is a persistent situation, and the question is, when does the pain end?
And Changamira here on YouTube gives us a little perspective on that question of where does the pain end. He writes in live, this situation has been building up for over 2 decades. The president needs to act and act decisively, but we know that the results won't be overnight. So that's one person who has a little bit of patience. Another person, maybe not so much, just on Twitter, saying as we face more power cuts, our rulers are losing their power to lie and intimidate us. They can't provide basic things like power, water, transportation. As we light candles in the dark, so is their power like a candle fighting against the strong winds of change. TENDAI, do you see this turning into mass anger from the people that you're talking to?
Unfortunately, there is a lot of resentment and there is a lot of anger and frustration. So even though people are told by the government to be patient and to try and hold on and to wait, I think the worse that things get and, the less that, people see in their pockets, people start to get very impatient. And the danger of that impatience is that it becomes, a dangerous kind of anger, which could lead to other things. But fortunately for now, we are not there yet. People are discontent and, they are still willing to hold on and, hope for the best for their families. But, it's a tough situation.
Marshall, final word in these last few seconds. How would you respond to that?
Well, the final word is that we have to work together as a country. We have to come together and proffer solutions to the economic problems that we have. We're going through a challenging situation, but my view is that this is not going to last. It will soon be over. The inflation will go down probably by the end of the year. The economy will stabilize. Yes, we have come out of ICTU. We just have to brace and continue taking medication. But I think very soon we'll turn around the corner. We need to be patient as a country. We need to work together.
Right.
The problems we've had have been there for the last 19 years. Surely the government has been barely in power for less than 8 months.
So
it would have been impossible to ensure all these things to go around within 8 months.
Thank you so much for that. I hear your point. Patience is key. Thank you to Marshall and to TENDAI for their thoughts on Zimbabwe.
Now we move to Botswana, where elephant hunting has resumed for the first time in 5 years after the government decided to end a ban on the practice.
The government of President Mokgweetsi Masisi says ethical hunting will safeguard rural communities that often face herds of elephants. But conservationists say allowing hunting will hurt efforts to provide a refuge for the animals. Botswana is home to at least 130,000 African elephants, but the species remains vulnerable, according to the World Wildlife Fund.
For more on this, we are joined from Nairobi by PAULA KAHUMBU. She is CEO of Wildlife Direct. That's a conservation organisation.
Eric Ferreira is a wildlife veterinarian. He joins us from Botswana's capital, Gaborone.
Good to have you here both. I have to show our audience this. This is a media invitation. Have a look here on my laptop. The date is the 22nd of May, 2019, and a surprising announcement. Media invitation, a press conference, lifting of the hunting suspension in Botswana. Botswana got so many compliments around the world for actually implementing a hunting ban. Eric, what happened?
Well, that's part of the challenge that we have. The world complimented that, Botswana about the suspension of the hunting ban. But we didn't take in consideration the effect that it's going to have on our wildlife and on our communities. And the hunting ban was basically done in a way without consultation. And it left out the communities, taking away the only power that they had, because it was part of a bigger policy of centralization of wildlife resources to promote the photographic safari industry. And incidentally, Botswana as a safe haven for elephants was used as the marketing strategy. But in the end, this is the communities were left out. We had influx of elephants in areas where they usually didn't occur. And we ended up with a situation that we have 27 of the 130,000 elephants in areas where they share with farmers, where there is no photographic tourism income and there is no such sustainability tools. And we got to the stage where more than 90% of people consulted during the social dialogue report to decide on whether to lift the hunting suspension or not were actually in favor of lifting the hunting suspension. But not only that, they were actually in favor of culling.
Well, here is one such person who's in favor of lifting that suspension. This is Tebego, who just tweeted in, as someone living in Botswana, elephants have become a threat to human life. This year alone, more than 50 people have been killed by elephants. There is a crisis of overpopulation of elephants, and this is due to good management that my country is well known for. And while we can't verify that number that he gives us, Paula, what do you make of the concerns of residents who say we need this ban to be lifted?
Personally, I think it's heartbreaking that people of Botswana think that this is a good idea. I come from a country which also has challenges with elephants and human-elephant conflict, but it's never been something that the communities have turned around and said, well, let's shoot elephants, let's let rich people come to our country and shoot these elephants in order to save them. That doesn't really make much sense at all. In fact, Botswana, like Kenya, has an enormous amount of income from tourism. And in Kenya, the tourism money is what is used to support those communities. So I find it hard to believe that if the hunting previously only generated a tiny proportion, less than 1% of the money went back to those communities, then I don't see why there's going to be any difference in opening up hunting now. And the tourism dollars that are coming into the country, why aren't they helping those very same communities? After all, elephants are a major attraction of visitors to Botswana. I don't think hunting is going to stop the movement of elephants moving south. This is happening for ecological reasons. It's not happening because there's no hunting. So I think that Botswana needs to get very creative. There are very many other options to deal with elephants, especially when they're moving into areas where there are people. We use fences. There are clever and innovative ways of keeping elephants out of people's farms.
Eric?
I mean, we don't have to kill these animals. I think that hunting is a very barbaric practice, and we've seen this all over the world. People are reacting, and Botswana can't pretend that there isn't a global heartbreak at this decision.
Eric, go ahead.
Well, yeah, the problem is the funding that we're talking about, the growing in the photographic industry, didn't reach these communities. While the hunting ban was, while hunting took
But why
place,
not?
the communities actually had
Why
control. What you must ask the previous administration. But the point is that we have a huge area where we have a huge area where, I mean, there is no tourism income, where all these coexisting, I mean, because we have a number of organizations that are doing a sterling job in trying to promote coexistence between wildlife and elephants. And the problem is we're simply fighting against numbers. That is where it comes in. It's very easy to say there are a number of other issues, but we have tried that. I mean, we have tried a number of things. And I think it's very important to realize that the elephants are not there. I mean, the hunting is not supposed to be a population control. The elephants are there to, like photographic safari industry, as sustainability tools to conservation, to restore the faith of the communities in a system that they were taken out of. It's all over the world. We have seen now that the movement to involve communities is very important. And at the same time, this is where you ask the question, I mean, why not? As I can say, then why is it that 90% or more than 90% of the people of Botswana decided against it? I mean, it's against the hunting. So I think the important thing is there are two things in place here.
Yeah, but I think that one of the challenges we face is that you have elephants which are moving into areas where there are communities. There is a certain number of people who are being injured in some farms that are being raided by elephants. Those are unlikely to be the elephants that will be hunted. So what we're going to see is rich people coming to Botswana, and the people who are going to make the money, the big dollars, are not going to be made by those communities. That's a fact. The elephants that are going to be killed are individual, intelligent, thinking, caring animals that live in families like human beings. Nobody would dream of opening up hunting of chimpanzees, gorillas, whales, or dolphins, other sentient animals that are very much like humans. It's just unthinkable. But this is something Paula, in the modern world of today.
Paula and Eric,
Paula,
I want to pause just for a moment because I want to bring in our viewers and others online because this is a hot topic online. So this is a tweet from Gofa, and this is circulating online. He pulls out a quote from someone who talks about this issue in another article. He says, "We simply cannot allow another mass extinction on our watch. Botswana was a haven and needs to stay that way." And his comment on that is, those people, referred to as the we, are welcome to come and take pictures of an elephant killing their child or relative and still promote elephants over population. So that's one side of the argument. And on the other side, we got via a comment on video. This is Audrey, and she talks about what conservationists think about this.
The decision by Botswana to lift its elephant hunting ban has sent shockwaves throughout the conservation world. We are losing 35,000 to 40,000 elephants a year to poaching. Elephants are classified as sentient beings. They have lifelong familial bonds, and therefore resuming elephant hunting is not only morally questionable, but it also flies in the face of international efforts to protect these giants and undermines considerable global efforts to halt illegal trade in ivory and parts.
So you hear the take right there. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for now, but I know this is a hot topic, so we will continue to follow this issue. Our thanks to Eric and Paula for being part of this conversation.
Finally, we move to Mauritania, where two bloggers have been detained for more than 2 months after writing Facebook posts alleging corruption among government officials, including the country's president.
Abdurrahman Widadi and Sheikh Ul Jiddo are being held on charges of malicious accusation. Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch are calling for their immediate and unconditional release. The men's Facebook post covered a property scam that defrauded thousands of Mauritanians and alleged that President Mohamed Ould Abdelaziz stood to benefit from it. Press freedom watchdog Reporters Without Borders sent this video comment.
Their detention clearly bears a political signature. It also sends a very chilling message among the journalism community just a few weeks ahead of the presidential election. And for Reporters Without Borders, it also highlights the fact that press freedom is significantly decreasing in Mauritania. The country has lost 46 places in RSF's Press Freedom Index since 2016. It's one of the biggest falls our organization has registered in recent years.
Joining us from Cincinnati to discuss this is SAIDOU WANE. He is a human rights activist and blogger for About Mauritania website. SAIDOU, thank you for joining us. I'm just looking at the campaign, the release campaign that Amnesty International is waging right now. Here are the two bloggers. The headline, Mauritania bloggers languish in detention 2 months after their arrest for condemning corruption. How dangerous is it to do what they did, to actually talk about corruption, to blog? Did they know that they might be incarcerated after doing that?
Thank you for having me. It is indeed a dangerous operation that these two journalists engaged in. The government of Mauritania, as we all know, has no qualm about committing criminality to protect itself, to tighten its grip on the power. And these two have been in the opposition in the past. They've been in investigative journalism, and these arrests signal that the Mauritanian government is worried about the upcoming elections, which are high stakes. Just imagine expose about the corruption and the criminality in the highest spheres of government being exposed right before the elections. That could have an impact on what's coming up soon.
So SAIDOU, we got this tweet from Seed, and he says, I'm against their detention, and I asked the president to release them on the Eid holiday that's coming up. I think, though, they should not make public confusion by sharing fake news. We don't want our country to be a chaotic country where you can publish whatever you want. We want responsible freedom. What did they do, and why are there people online who say it's fake news, quote unquote?
This issue goes at the core of one of the fundamentals of democracy that Mauritania doesn't have, which is freedom of expression. These two individuals were investigating corruption, allegedly from the General Aziz, the president himself, and they should not be just arrested in this manner without due
process. Yeah, I see what you're saying. SAIDOU, are you still with us?
Yes,
yeah,
I'm sorry.
Great.
I had
please continue. I'm just wondering about who is paying attention to these bloggers' detention. Inside Mauritania, are people aware of it? Are they saying that this is not a good thing in Mauritania? Is anyone paying attention?
Yes, in Mauritania, the public opinion is paying attention, but as with many other issues, there's a difficulty in exposing this on the international scene. So in Mauritania right now, on Facebook and all other platforms, people are sharing and trying to get the story out, but it's not reaching many news outlets. Yours is an exception.
So, SAIDOU, we got a comment from Nasser Widadi, pretty prolific online in the West, and he's the brother of Abdurrahman. Here's what he told the stream.
Free speech is under threat in Mauritania. The case of my brother is the best proof of that state of affairs, although the Mauritanian government claims that the country has one of the widest spaces for expression in the Arab world. In fact, that is not the case. Ultimately, my brother is sitting in jail in a blatant case of violation of that right, as he worked tirelessly on exposing, in the public interest, one of the country's biggest financial scandals in history. And the reality is that the Mauritanian government, for all of the talk about free speech, it does not tolerate it because ultimately, free speech has become costly to the regime's image.
So in a sentence, what do you want the world to know?
This case is not isolated. This case fits in a pattern, which is that the Mauritanian government engages in violating freedom of expression, freedom of assembly. Just recently, a few months ago, a group of widows and orphans from the ethnic cleansing 30 years ago were trying to leave Mauritania for Geneva,
right,
to witness this case.
And they were Thank you for shedding light on an important story in Mauritania. We really appreciate you joining us on the stream and for all of our guests today. Malika.
Thanks so much for being here.
See you next time.